We'll start over. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Data Strategy for Early Stage Startups. I'm John McTavish, your host for today, and I'm excited to have Michael Lapidus, our business analyst and startup analyst for the Paralect Accelerator with us today. And also our second guest is Rosi Bremec. She is a data strategist and also an advisor to the Paralect Accelerator. Welcome. Thanks for coming on the show to talk about data strategy, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right. And if anyone's out there watching, please let us know in the comments where you're tuned in from, what you're excited about, and let us know if you have any questions throughout the show. In terms of a plan, we are going to go through the data strategy following the same roadmap that startups usually follow in the early stages and that startups in our accelerator follow. So that will be the first stage of pre-MVP data. Second stage is design and discovery. Third stage is building the product and going to market planning. The fourth is launching the product and working towards product market fit. I see a few comments. So we are live on YouTube at least. Awesome. Somebody from LinkedIn, shout out and let us know that you're actually seeing us there, please. That would be fantastic. This is my first live event, so I'm sorry if we have any problems. Michael, could you just let us know a little bit about the accelerator real quick and the process that you guys are going through to find two great founders to join us this year?
Sure thing. So we are currently on the batch 2. We are up and running the accelerator this year from March 15, and we are accepting applications till May 15. So yeah, the process is actively running. We are received a bunch of responses. We are evaluating applications every week, and there are plenty of them. We are really trying so hard. A lot of very exciting companies and startups who really want to collaborate with us and work with us. So it's pretty exciting, and I would like to use this opportunity to promote the accelerator and to ask if you have an idea or a roadmap for the next 6 months and you're really excited and really a really good founder and you think you are, so you are welcome to our accelerator. Yeah, we will try to help you to build your product.
Fantastic. And Rosi, just real quick, can you give us an overview of what you do with Focus to Scale and how that's serving founders?
Right. I put together a framework after going through the information overload dilemma myself when working for a startup. And I literally put together a 4-step program, a 4-step framework. And the framework is available online, that, with all the templates for tracking plans, anything you need in regards to implementing it. And I also coach companies in how I hold their hand and actually implement it. So I've got coaching programs, one-to-one coaching programs, and also some that include the framework in it. And I also have a special program for female founders. It's called Founders 360, and I especially help the female founders in that area.
Awesome.
I'll build a data strategy for their startup.
Awesome. All right, well, let's dive into pre-MVP data then. And the first question is for Rosi. What should founders understand about their data strategy before they start to design or build the product? Maybe they only have an idea. Where do they start with data?
Well, we need to eventually you're going to need to make data-driven decisions. And to do that, you need your information to be accurate, to be consistent, and most of all, you need it to be organized in a way that it relates to your customer and their behavior, to your product or service, right? So And the main reason startups fail is because they fail to reach product market fit. They run out of cash, and their CAC, their customer acquisition costs are too high. So this is why I think it's so crucial to start with a strategy. So understand the flow of your customer journey and build your data around it, instead of doing it the other way, which a lot of startups do, is they just collect a bunch of data, or they put this aside. They go, yeah, one day I'll deal with it. Right now, I just want to build the product, and then they end up having their data not aligned with their customer, and they can't make sense of it. They can't understand it. So I think that it should these foundations that I use are like really crucial to setting up the right framework, to setting up the right mindset, to build a product that your customers want, and not a product that you have to convince your customers to want after you build it.
Fantastic. All right. Michael, if you don't have anything to add, we can dive right into your question.
Yeah, let's go forward. Yeah,
All right.
sure.
So, question number 2 about pre-MVP data. We have, in accelerators like ours who welcome idea stage startups, what kind of data do we want to see from founders? If you get an application, they have some sort of pitch deck, maybe, or some other form of data presentation. What do we like to see?
Yeah, so I should mention here that our accelerator is devoted and aiming more on startups who have a validated idea or no code MVP. So it is a really early stage startups who doesn't have like a working business or doesn't have a product yet. So we are not, I don't think that we are like focusing more on some sort of data, because obviously they didn't have any data right now. They only have its founder, its idea, and maybe the team, and not the product team, but the founder, CEO, and maybe some marketing experts and so far. So at this moment, we are focusing obviously on the founder's background, on the team background, like whether the founder had the previous exits, whether he had a proper education or his previous experience. And what we have noticed right now is that it is really important for startups to address a really clear message. Like, we have seen a lot of pitch decks which were just some sort of a number of some marketing slogans and cliches, and it was really hard to understand what the company is doing and what their products are. So we are focusing more on the pitch deck. It should be clear. We're focusing on founders, their background, and sometimes actually we receive applications for startups who already have MVP, but it is not 100% ready. Like, they have some really general data, like number of customers or number of downloads of the application, but it is really raw, and this is kind of data that doesn't actually says a lot. So yeah, I think these are the things we are like focusing most right now.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll get into later which data we want to focus on more and which is inconsequential. All right, third question is open to both or either of you. So what tips do you have for founders to understand and segment their target market? And how do we use that data to validate the assumptions they have about either their problem or the solution that they want to build? Who wants to take it first?
I'd like to just add something on to what Michael said from the previous question, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So one misconception that I see is at pre-MVP, sometimes data is not there yet, right? As Michael said, and they were not looking they were not looking for companies that necessarily had data. But a data strategy, for example, the first thing I do with them is a positioning statement. Who are you building the product for? What does it do? Why is it different? We align their vision and mission, and then we look at the customer journey, not from a data perspective, but literally as, okay, how is the customer how does the customer flow through the stages of your product? And and that's when, so you don't need the data first, but you need to understand how the customer is going to interact with your product, even at pre-MVP stage, which could change, which should actually change and evolve as the product gets more mature. But there is a misconception as to say, oh, we don't have data yet, so we don't need a strategy. And a strategy is literally a plan. You're creating a plan. This is who my product is for. This is why I'm creating it, my mission. This is how I'm going to get to my vision, is how I'm going to get there. And this is how my customer is going to interact with my product. So those are the first 3-4 things that a data strategy, because if you don't know that, then you're not going to know what data you need to collect. Yeah. So it's really important that those fundamental, so I think as an accelerator, you need to have your potential cohort have these kind of things lined out, because if they don't have these things clear, then they're going to struggle to create their product, to create a product basically that customers want. So I just wanted to put that out there. And the tips for founders to understand, and I think that you start off with a hypothesis as to who you think your target market is, and then you validate. You're supposed to validate those assumptions by understanding who is using your product and how they're using it, right? And so you would do that by mapping out their journey, and the criteria, and what is the criteria for an ideal segment, and see who is using that. When you see who is using that, you can then take that group of people and then give that to marketing, and they can go out and get more lookalike audiences like that. So I think setting up your structure, the way your team works, in a way that is constantly validating who your target market is, constantly looking at how your users are using your product and interacting with it. I think that is a very key thing to do in order to obtain, to always optimize and find that target market that everybody's so much searching for.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Michael, do you have anything to add for this question? Michael, are you there? All right, Michael has frozen for the time being, folks, but this is the risk of being live. All right, from the audience, do you have any questions about this pre-MVP data section? Anything that Rosie or Michael has given us so far? If not, we will move on to product design and discovery phase, and hopefully Michael will join us again very soon. All right, here's a question for Rosie. And it's about your last workshop, which I do recommend that everybody go back and watch the workshop that Rosie gave along with us on the Paralect YouTube channel. It was about time to value and why it's a very important metric for products and startups to measure and optimize. Michael's back. Fantastic. Welcome back, Michael.
Nice to see you. Yes.
Nice to see you again. All right, we've jumped ahead a little bit to design and discovery, but we will come back to your question in a second. Just quickly, Rosie, about time to value at the design stage. So we're thinking that the business analysts and the designers are working together with the founder to design their solution. They're making mock-ups, they're designing prototypes. What data should they get a hold of in order to sort of inform that process, make it better from day one of design?
Well, the TTV is the time from when the user finds your product and the time where he goes, wow, I get it. Like he sees the value. And so in order for the design, you need to, you're right, you need to prepare for this data-wise. Otherwise, you won't be able to calculate it accurately and monitor it. And you're always needing to reduce that time, the TTV time. So what you need to do is, number one, map out the journey, map out the user journey. You identify what events take place between each journey segment. So it's usually between one behavioral segment and another. You create the behavioral segment, which is the journey segment plus the active events. Then the time and date stamp of each, you need to capture the time and date stamp of each stage of the journey. When you know when the user hits the active trial stage and when the user hits the active paying stage of the journey, for example, if it's a paying app, the difference between the two is your TTV. And so the team would need to also always look to reduce the TTV. So to answer your question in a nutshell, you need to map out behavioral segments because the difference between two behavioral segments is your TTV, and you need to make sure that you time and date stamp when the user enters one stage and enters the other.
All right. And I guess a follow-up question to that, is it possible to test this at like a design prototype stage with user testing, or does that only come into play later when the product is actually live?
Well, you can at least map out what it is what are the stages, what are the events, what are the actions that take place between one stage and another. Because when you map out behavioral segments the first time, it doesn't, as I said before, there doesn't need to be data, but you need to have an idea of what it's going to be. So what happens from a trial, from the time the user registers to the time he's going to pay for the subscription or for the SaaS model or whatever it is. What does he have to do? Does he have to fill in a form? Does he have to click? Where does he have to click? And can we reduce those steps? So the idea is, if there is 3-4 steps until it gets to the ideal stage, can we reduce them? So it's a good exercise to do, so that you can start to see how many steps there are between one stage and another, and to try to reduce that. At least that will give you an idea. If you don't have actual data, at least you'll have a plan to say, okay, right now they have to go through these 5 steps, but we already know that as soon as we go live, we're working on reducing that 4th step and getting them straight in. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Yeah, that makes it clear. Michael, I will go back to one of your questions that we skipped ahead.
Sure.
All right, so we're talking about the design and discovery phase, and now the product team has more people. It's no longer just the founder. It's got a BA, a PDM, a designer. Who owns the sort of data strategy at this point? And in particular, I want to make it clear, like, whose responsibility it is to gather the data, figure out which data to gather, and present it to the other people on the team.
Well, really great question. Everything that concerns the data and, of course, gathering requirements from the data, I think it's mostly product manager or BA's responsibility. But for example, there are procedures when a designer and product manager could work together. For instance, in the discovery phase, we have a process which is called usability testing. it is when we are interviewing the potential users of our product, when we, for example, have developed an MVP or a clickable prototype. We are really interested in the feedback from the users and from potential users, and we are doing it in multiple ways. It could be interviews or focus groups. When we are gathering their feedback, they're telling us what is developed really well and what should be developed better or in some other way. And it is really valuable information and data for the further development. And sometimes even founders can provide us with responders or with the end users. It is also there, like they're very interested in a really clear feedbacks from you, from people who will actually use the application or product. So yeah, mostly this is our product managers like stuff, I think.
All right, fantastic.
That's my experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we had a few questions come in the chat. So the first one at least relates to our earlier topic. So let's get at that now. Alexandra wrote, sometimes products are not able to think of a proper data strategy and start gathering that data too late. What would you advise in such cases to minimize the negative effects? So perhaps, Rosie, you spoke a bit about this on your last presentation where you came into the startup and all the different teams were gathering different data and nobody was really talking to each other. So where do you start when you start too late?
Oh gosh, I would start with first of all, the earlier the better, but it's never too late to start. So the earlier the better. So and following the previous question, the setting up of the data strategy is a team effort, and the founders do need to be involved very, very, very strongly, because it aligns the whole mission, vision, why you're creating this, and when it sets your North Star, which we'll talk about I think a little bit later. It sets your main KPIs, and it's all around your user and how it's used your product, how he or she is using your product. So it has to be like an executive level, like it has to be the founders and as much of the team as possible. It has to be like a workshop, and it doesn't happen in 2 hours, right? I say the minimum it takes for me to create a data strategy with a startup is about 10 hours. And the more of the team that's involved is better. So when there is data already, I use the same method. It just takes a little bit longer because usually there's a little bit more opinions, and there's a lot of already set up dashboards, and there's people already set in their ways, but the method is the same. Map out journey, you set up your positioning, mission, vision, journey segments, behavioral segments, core events, KPIs, North Star. Like the method is literally the same. I find that when there's bigger companies or there is more mature companies in the sense that there's data established already, it just takes a little bit longer to adopt because people don't like to change things, right? So it's just a little bit harder, but it's the same exact method, and it works every time.
All right, and another question we had come in. This was about user segmentation or market segmentation from Elena. She asks, sometimes founders are afraid to skip a valuable part of potential users when focusing on a particular segment, so a particular target audience, I assume she means there. How can we be as specific as possible at an early stage? The common advice is to niche down as much as possible, but also try and cover all the target audience segments that can be considered. Michael, do you want to cover this one? You just wrote about segments and market research on our blog.
Yeah, I was about to dive in. Yes,
Sure.
you right. We have recently published research which concerned the market research and its methods. So the very like I think the most valuable advice here would be to do a proper market research to understand the target audience and to avoid this problem when you are targeting not all of the audience, and some of the parts could be cancelled. So yeah, it is very important to do the proper market research, especially what is related to your end users and your audience. It is very crucial, especially for early stage startups and companies who are only about to develop their go-to-market strategy. So yeah, be sure to do the proper market research, and if you are interested how to do it, our a very own article about that. I think you can find it on our LinkedIn. It's been pretty recently. Yeah. Also,
Sweet.
we have yeah, just one more slight
Yeah.
thing that we have also noticed that sometimes founders are so like so convinced in their ideas, and that they're developing the product for the specific audience, but we have noticed sometimes on our projects we have to convince them to also broaden their like borders and to spread their idea on other audiences, because sometimes founders are like have tunnel vision, and it's sometimes hard to presume them to go in some other way. So yeah, it's really good.
For sure. Rosie, do you have something to add?
I do.
Awesome.
So usually market research will give you a hypothesis. So it'll tell you, okay, these people are most likely to use your product. And a lot of founders will say, will be adamant and say, I'm developing for this segment or this part, these people. What then happens is that if you so you go in with a hypothesis, but then when you create behavioral segments and you monitor who is actually using your product, that's when you'll see if your market research actually is correct. Because we had the same kind of scenario in when I worked with a company called OneTap by Receipt Bank. It's now called Dext, and we thought that we were creating the app was for our target segment, according to the market research, was Uber drivers. And we thought, yeah, it's Uber drivers. And it actually showed in the downloads that the Uber drivers were the ones that were mostly downloading it. So if you would stop there, you would say, right, so we're creating the app for the market research told us that the app is created for Uber drivers. Look how many downloads we have from Uber drivers and registrations, because they fill in their profile. So we knew that they were Uber drivers. But then when we did this exercise that I'm talking about and created behavioral segments and we saw the visuals, the actual people that were using the product, that were like they were our active users, were actually entertainers. So we had a lot of downloads. Market research told us Uber drivers download. If we looked at the download data stats, Uber drivers were our key market. But then they phased out. They didn't continue to use it. So our most active segment was entertainers. So if we were to go to market, so if we were to stop at the first part, we would go to market in America, for example, or in another country, and we would just go for Uber drivers, right? That would be throwing money down the drain. That would be a leaky bucket, right? And so by combining market research, the website data, the initial the number of downloads metrics, with the product usage metrics, that gave us a clear understanding that it was who actually was using our product and who's actually was championing our product, and it didn't match the market research. So I think this is something that founders and teams startups need to keep in mind that that will give you a hypothesis. It doesn't necessarily mean that those are your power users, your champion users.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and thanks for adding. And it connects very well to the third question that we had here for Michael, which is also about market research data. So, if you want to add just a little bit, Michael, what data do we use to prioritize features and reach a consensus on the minimum viable product, so that we don't build for too long, that we put out a great product that is concise and meant to fit a specific need?
Yeah. What Rosie said is 100% true. Everything that comes from the experience and from the continuous exploring, testing hypotheses. And this is what product managers do. They are formulating ideas and theories from uh, a great bunch of data sources. I think we will talk about this later on today, but I would like to slightly mention here that product managers are collecting data from different resources such as support from the dev team, from employees, and so on and so on. Then he create the hypothesis. Then this hypothesis should be prioritized, and then it should be tested with the team. And concerning the MVP, what we are doing, we are also trying to formulate the score, which features should be developed and which should be skipped in this very first sprint. And um, if you are new to software development, maybe some of our audiences, MVP is a minimal viable product. This is product which is necessary for um, founder to present his very own vision of a product to investors, or just to test his ideas on what should work in this market or not with potential users, with the users. So when we are coming to the functionality, very first data came from the founder. He is telling us what he wants to see in a minimal viable product and what he thinks should be there and what should like have a demand on the market. It could be based on his very own research or from his experience. Maybe we are like dealing with a serial entrepreneur who have built several products before, but also sometimes we are trying to use a different methods for prioritizing functionality in MVP. Um, so there are different techniques. The one of the most popular techniques used is to categorize features is user story mapping. It is one of the most efficient one because it involves all of the product stakeholders to define the highest and the lowest priority features. We try to envision how supposed users will be navigating the app, how they will use it, and so on. Um, I can't really relate to any market metrics what we are gathered on this stage because most of the time there is like, as I mentioned, there are techniques, there are things when we are picking, for example, um, we are defining a user goals, for example, booking a hotel in a tourist tab. This action is then split into sub-steps: picking the right hotel, submitting user details, requesting transfer, and so on and so forth. And each of these steps is then written down as a user story as a user, and then there is user type. I want to do that and that. And after this done, the team maps user stories according to their goals and their significance. This method helps to identify which product features are best to be included in the MVP and which into the next product phase, product release. There are a bunch of other metrics and techniques. I think we will also mention them later today, but in general, the process looks like I have just described, yeah, in Paralect.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Rosie, did you have anything to add? Any more about market research data?
No, as I said, I combine it with product usage data and create 6 KPIs, and I would prioritize features on that.
Okay. All right. Then we will move on to the last question. We've mentioned already a couple times different data dashboards. So remember, we haven't launched the MVP yet at this point. We're still in the design and discovery phase. What does the dashboard look like? What metrics are there, and what should be added to it as we sort of finalize the feature set for the MVP?
Should I start? I'll start.
Either of you, yeah, sure, go for it.
Well, I think that when I set these things up, the dashboard should visualize each behavioral segment, how much they've increased, like what's the percentage increase or decrease in a given time, and in that given time, I'd want to know what we've done, as in growth experiments, as in new features. And I would also show I would also have a visual of the TTV if it's increasing or decreasing.
All right, Michael, do you have anything to add?
I can definitely relate to that. When we are gathering requirements, especially feature requirements, when they are formed, we are trying to combine everything we said earlier today in order to develop what is most important first, and to delay what can be skipped, and what could be like developed later. Because for example, there is a matrix which is called Moscow. This model is also frequently used for prioritizing features for an MVP, and Moscow stands for M, what must-haves, S should-haves, C could-haves, and W is not this time. Yeah, so it is really like really frequently used metrics, because it is quite understandable what we should do now and what we should do later. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, we do have. We had one question come in during that section, and that was from Fion Namali. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name too bad. They asked, for the super early stage startup with a finished product less than 1 year after launch, they want to reach a bigger market. They asked, what info or data should I dig into? So an established product, I assume, that wants to grow bigger, what data should they be tracking? Anybody want to give some high-level advice there?
Well, I would personally track. I would understand what it is that defines their champion user or power user, whatever it is. So how they would have a segment of how many of these kind of people, and then by knowing who your power user is, you then know that you can then find more people like them. So it's important to organize in a way that like in our case, for example, that I mentioned before, we found out that it was the entertainers who were championing our product. So if I want to increase my customer base, I wouldn't go after the Uber drivers. I would go after entertainers in another country or So it's really important to understand who it is that's championing your product, in the sense of who is using it and who's finding value. Because if they're using it frequently and the way it should be used, that means that they're finding value, and it's those kind of people you want and you need. So those are the people that you need to look for.
Super.
Yeah, I can.
Totally. Go ahead, Michael.
I can add here that it is also very important to understand, especially if you're an early stage startup, like which people are having the problem and like which problem your solution is trying to solve, and try to find as many people as can relate to the problem and to the, I don't know, some specific lack of the product, and try to dig there more, like which people could potentially use the solution you're trying to build. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to building the MVP and go to market. First question for Rosie. At this point, is it time to start estimating these life cycle segments that you talked about? And what's the process for setting events and time frames for tracking user behavior?
So yeah, I think it is the time. It's paramount that you start thinking about this by mapping out segments. You start to create a tracking plan that aligns with the segments, and you start focusing the team on activating those segments, right? Even if there is no data or not enough data, with this you're setting the right foundations for the team to focus on traction, to focus on retention, and because you're understanding what features are being used and which are not, and so it saves so much time and effort, and you stop building features because they're sexy or because somebody really likes them, as in the design team or the development team, but nobody really uses them, from your customer base. So it really it's to me it's paramount. It's not, oh, maybe I should, or maybe later. It's so key to set the right foundations in the mindset of your team to focus on your customer. And if you don't have the data organized in a way to support that, they're gonna start looking at other metrics, other data that's not relevant. So yeah, long story short, I think it's really, really important that you start tracking behavior.
Right on. All right. Michael, at this point, assuming that the team has comprehensive market research, a validated product problem, how do we set realistic targets for go to market? And this is a pretty wide question, so whatever you want to focus on for that, let us know.
Sure. I remember a lot of cases with early stage startups, and when they were struggling for go to market and set goals. And I also seen there were a question in our chat about a pretty associated topic with that. So sometimes when early stage startups are going to investors, it is sessions where investors are given advices, and they're giving you like the way where you should go in order to earn money and earn investments from this particular venture fund. So sometimes investors are setting the goals for the startup, because venture funds, they are not generalists. They're like sharks in their sphere, and particularly in some segments of the market. There are funds which are focused mainly for some certain segment of the market, and they know which data, um, which numbers are especially important in this specific segment. So sometimes startups are receiving this feedback from their potential investors or even angels, who is telling them that, you should go with this particular things in this market. I can't give you like the exact examples because most of the info which I deal with was like on an NDA. But the general idea here is that sometimes startups can search for the advice from the investors, from the potential investors or angels, who can like guide them like where they should go. Yeah. So this it is what it is.
Right. It sounds like that can also be a double-edged sword as well. But Rosie, do you have anything to add?
Not really. No, not on
Okay.
this one.
All right. Any questions from the audience about the MVP or go to market? Or move on to launch. We have just about 15 minutes left. It looks like the timing should be just about perfect. All right. So first up, for reaching product market fit after launch, how do you set a North Star metric for a new product, I guess, before the launch? And how quickly can you start making realistic goals around it? And this ties back to our last question a little bit.
Well, the North Star, it should start at the very beginning of the of developing the product. So where do you want it to go? It doesn't. It should be the core of everything. It's where the focus is. All the teams, the individuals' KPIs, and all activities should point to the North Star. So whatever anybody's doing, it should somehow relate or contribute to the North Star. It consolidates all the work you're doing, the values you're delivering across acquisition, engagement, conversion, and retention. So for example, if you're a hotel booking app, this metric, the North Star metric, is nights booked. While for a messaging app, it would be the messages sent, for example. Or it could be a behavioral segment, so the number of active paying users. So what you need to understand here is it is the main point of your product and why people are using it. From the North Star, you're able to lead the team to a common goal, reverse engineer your product flow to optimize and develop your tracking and analytics. You set. So how I set it when I work with my clients is that we set we identify the criteria in the form of a collection of events for a specific behavioral segment, and that behavioral segment is the segment that you want more of. So I mentioned before a couple of times throughout this podcast is that you want more power users, you want more the users that are championing. So what is it that they do before? What is it that they do during? And you capture that kind of ideal scenario, and to me, and from that you create a segment out of that, and your North Star is to increase more of those people. Increase. So if it was increase the number. So a North Star could be, for example, if it's a paying app. You don't want just to increase the number of paying users. You want to increase the number of active paying users, because you know that activity will bring retention. Lack of activity will bring churn, right? So you have to focus on activating your paying users, and by creating a behavioral segment as to what that means, what is an active paying user, what it is. Then you're able to constantly to focus the team on that, to constantly increase that number.
Awesome. And Michael, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when we are developing products, talking with the founders, we most of the time creating a special sort of a document which is called vision and scope. And in this document, there is a section which is devoted to success criteria from developing this product. And in these success criteria, they could be, most of the time, it is a qualitative numbers. Like as Rosie 100% right mentioned, it most of the time things that are related to the business, like increased sales, increased number of paid customers, and so on. But sometimes, especially in my very recent project, could be a qualitative criteria. For example, we have developed a very first design of our new system. It is also a booking system. But our customers said, this looks pretty much like our website. And my goal is to create something really new, something which won't be associated with our previous business. They have a working business, like a very traditional one, but they now are creating an application and something who has never been done before in this industry. And they said that except increasing a number of bookings, we want to create a really new product in terms of user experience, in terms of the design, and in general. So his North Star is a new product and the number of increased number of bookings. And it is success criteria is very important because it gives our team a vision what our customer want to achieve. And I like how you put it like a North Star metric. It is very fancy, and I think I will use it in my work, like when interviewing clients, like what is your North Star for a new product launch. It is awesome.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Well, it's not mine. Definitely not my term. But all right, next question. And this is also from Michael. What strategy or data informs new features after the MVP is launched? And also, who's in charge of collecting it and sharing it with the team?
Yeah, I think we covered like most of this today, so I won't like stop for a lot here. So product manager is responsible for collecting data for the new features. There are several sources of collecting data for the product manager. It is support, development team, employees, and and this is pretty much it. There is a lot of tools which help to gather this data. For example, there is product which is called product dashboard. It is allows to collect all of this valuable info from the company and help to really prioritize what should be developed. And there is like several prioritization frameworks. One of them is called RISE. This is like an acronym. It stands for Reach, Impact, Confidence, and Effort. So, yeah, it is like a very broadly used framework which allows to determine which ideas or which hypotheses should be like developed first. And yeah, we are also using it in Paralect here. So
Awesome. Thanks. Rosie, did you have anything to add on that?
Well, to me, when it said, when I see a question like what strategy or data informs new features, to me it's simple. Which features are activating users? Which features are causing users to churn? Very simple. And who's collecting it and sharing it? Well, I think the way I work is that it's all set up. So it's a team effort, as in we set it up. It's on a dashboard. It's on a visual. Everybody, and the most important thing is that everybody understands it the same way, because it's wrapped around a user. You don't have marketing having their own dashboards, development having their own, and sales having their own. They can, like, as a sub level, but there should be a level of KPIs that are user journey driven and user journey based, that everybody interprets the same way and everybody can relate what they're doing to them. So is what I'm doing, has it activated users this month or has it not? So who's collecting it and sharing it? It should be set up with in a way that the whole team understands it, and then it's the product manager who looks at it and interprets it and actually makes the changes. So yeah, I find it hard to. I've seen companies struggle because there's, instead of setting it up, it could be painful, especially when there's a lot of data and a lot of people. But if you don't do it and set it up properly in the beginning or whenever you can, you keep having these questions: who's collecting it? Where are we getting that from? And then everybody interprets it differently, and it becomes messy. So my advice is to set up the right foundations. A data strategy should be a foundational thing to do. And if you haven't done it yet, you need to do it now.
For sure. All right. Next up, we have what's live with real users. I guess what metrics will early stage funds or investors be looking for? Michael, you already touched on this a little bit. It depends on the segment and what that investor is interested in. But do we have anything more to add?
Well, I think investors are interested in traction, right? So the metrics I've been talking about for the past this past podcast it all revolves around user how it's using a product. So it's their traction metrics, retention metrics. I think investors are quite interested in that, or at least that you have a plan, a setup plan of how you're gonna manage that and how you're gonna monitor that. So if you don't have data, at least you have a sound plan to do that.
All right. Yeah. Michael, anything to add?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So if we are talking about the company who is currently running some sort of a product which is after the launch and which is like generating some sort of users, definitely traction things are extremely important. Like Rosie's mentioned, like a retention rate, churn rate, daily active users, and daily monthly users, revenue per user, everything which is related to the usage of our product. And if we are talking about especially companies who have launched their product pretty recently, these early metrics are crucially important in order to for the next releases, for the further development of a product. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. All right. We have reached the end, but I do have one quick question before we wrap up. And that's related to sort of the future of data strategy. Just from a marketing perspective, it seems like the quality or the quantity of data that we're actually collecting in products is going down. Maybe it's harder to collect due to things like Apple's policies on user tracking. I've heard some marketers say that Facebook's ads targeting just doesn't work as well as it used to, or it's not as specific or performant as it used to be. Is it getting harder to collect data, and where do you think it's going in the future?
I can start. Well, I think you need to. Yes, that it's very true. It's getting harder to because of GDPR and all these data protection policies that are around. So I think that it's even more paramount to make sure that you create a customer acquisition engine within the product, which is basically understanding who's using it and getting in and getting more referrals, putting in different referral growth strategies, and really understanding how customers are using it instead of relying on constantly bringing people in from the top of the funnel. So yeah, that's my take on it. I think it's more and more clear that you have to focus on a lot on who you have, who you've brought into your product, and nurture them and make sure that they shout it out from the rooftops, basically.
Awesome. Michael, anything to add?
Yeah, so data is everything in today's world. All of the decisions, all of the crucial things that are going with our product, they should be related to the data and information we are like receiving from the market. And everything we said today, I think, is really important for an early stage startups and for everyone who is developing products. So yeah, it's just my conclusion and resume of today's podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We are right on the hour, so I will wrap it up. Listeners out there, if you are interested in learning more about what Rosie does, go to focus2scale.com. Follow her on LinkedIn. She's got an ebook there that I read through earlier. It's very insightful. It gives a good window into her approach to data strategy. Thank you so much, Rosie.
Thank you.
And Michael, of course, thank you for joining us for the show, giving your perspective as a previous venture analyst and current startup analyst, business analyst with the Paralect Accelerator. Founders out there, if you're interested in chatting with Michael in the future or checking out the Paralect Accelerator, go to accelerator.paralect.com. And also, Rosie will be an advisor to the two founders who join. So we look forward to working with you both more in the future. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.